writing about Atlantis, our knowledge of the past went back at the most 2,500 years. That was about as far as we knew anything at all. Nowadays, practically every archaeological team of any importance in the world is turning up material of 8,000, 9,000 years ago. And I feel that within a very short time we should be getting artifacts dating back to BC 10,000, which was the time of Atlantis and which were contemporary with it. It still appears that the main body of information, for what it is worth, which may even contain the legendary Book of Thoth, to which we get references, is still hidden somewhere underneath either the first or the second pyramid. And I say definitely underneath, because they stand on a rock foundation which is about 50 meters above the level of the Nile, and there is ample room for subterranean chambers of any kind. So far, none of the explorers have been able to find anything, but it's certainly there. There are too many stories from the Arabs, who after all were the best informed on Egyptian history, about this, for us to be able to overlook them and deny them.
And there are still other sources. One of the American psychic Edgar Cayce's most intriguing prophecies is that the records of Atlantis will be found near the Sphinx, which he says is itself a bizarre representation of the form of Atlantean man.
I think this is rather improbable. The reasons are the following. The Sphinx is a god of an alien civilization. It came from Assyria, from Babylonia, or somewhere in that direction, during one of their invasions of Egypt. It is not a female goddess, but a male god, representing a man, head, or the body of a lad, rather resembling the Assyrian statuary which you find in most great museums at the present moment. The other thing is this, that to go below the level of the Sphinx temple, you would be below the level of the Nile, and I think your chambers would be flooded out. And as it was an alien culture, I very much doubt whether there would have been any connection whatsoever between the Temple of the Sphinx and the pyramids standing on the plateau immediately above. That there may be an entrance somewhere near the Sphinx is probable. The rock face at the moment is very, very broken. There have been many disturbances in the last couple of thousand years, and it will take an enormous amount of work before we manage to finally find a proper entrance. As for the pyramids themselves, anybody who has ever looked at a picture of the Great Pyramid realizes that well underneath it there is a chamber which was discovered by Weiss and Perring about 1850, which is a dead end. Perhaps there we shall discover what Weiss and Perring were unable to find a century ago, that is, the secrets of lost Atlantis as recorded by the Egyptians, and of which both Solon and Plato had knowledge.
As well as stretching our historical perspective, perhaps even leading us to Plato's cyclical view of history, the present-day search for lost civilizations is gradually exposing again a whole network connecting the sites of antiquity. There are startling comparisons between the pyramids of Egypt and the ziggurats of Mexico, though at first glance there seem to be anomalies. Here's Princess Marta de Ruspoli adroitly scaling a huge side of the problem.
Well, you see, what has upset the study and the comparison is that the chronology is so different. The South American pyramids, I mean the Mexican pyramids, are much less ancient than the Egyptian ones. But, you see, there we have the mystery of the Olmecs again. The Olmecs who arrived probably from a sunken Cyclopean city and started building Cyclopean walls. Well, they worked especially in a place called Monte Alban, that is, when they left the plains, which were very unhealthy. And there have been diggings in Monte Alban recently. Well, they discovered that the pyramids fitted other pyramids, and that when a pyramid was old and that they wanted to make another pyramid, they made it on top of the old pyramid, covering the old pyramid up like a box that fitted very, very close. Well, some of them have 2, 3, 4 pyramids in each other. Well, they had the idea to open a passage into the basis of a big pyramid of Monte Alban. And they came to the huge pyramid, which was the primitive pyramid, which was completely buried and went way down into the earth, and was made with huge blocks of stone. Again, the stone builders, you see, the Olmecs with their huge stones, which are practically the same size as the stones of the Great Pyramid in Egypt. Well, that pyramid, which they now have, they've uncovered a few yards of this pyramid inside the other pyramids, and it goes right into the earth. This pyramid is very much more ancient, so that little by little one may be able to trace a chronology. But if it's true that the Olmecs brought that, and that they came from the Bahama Islands, where there was a Cyclopean city, maybe there were huge pyramids that are under the Atlantic now.
So this means that it is possible that they will discover contemporary pyramids with the Egyptian pyramids, which means that if they didn't transport them from Egypt, the Olmecs, then they both came from the same culture.
They probably came from the same culture, and there were probably pyramids in Atlantis.
Culture is worldwide. It always has been. It has spread from one side of the Atlantic to the other. And in the particular case of the pyramids, it may be taken as absolutely certain that the source of pyramid building was in the Atlantean continent itself, and that the idea spread to both sides. The fact that there were slight differences in the methods of construction is neither here nor there. But pyramids, and like a lot of other things, spread east and west from the center of the Atlantic, and not across it, and they were not conceived spontaneously on both sides at the same time, as some people hope.
Far from being spontaneous creations, the pyramids are steadily revealing themselves as the ciphers for a whole cosmic geometry. The relationship of the pyramid's height to the perimeter of its base is the same as that between the radius and circumference of a circle, and it is probable that the expanding squares of the successive pyramids were intended to represent a series of concentric rings. The whole scheme formed a model of the mystical city, in terms of which the philosophers of the ancient world were accustomed to express their cosmology. An example of this figure can be found in Plato's description of Atlantis, as well as in biblical versions of Ezekiel and St. John the Divine. The traditional units of land measurement, many of which are still in use today, have survived practically unaltered for several thousand years. They have, it appears, two principal origins. Some, like the inch, foot, yard, and mile, are sacred units, representing some important fraction of the Earth's ideal or formal dimensions. These units formed the language of cosmology and were used to express the geometrical structure of the universe. Others originated as geodetic or scientific earth-measuring units. Of these, the acre is a notable example, for it represents 1 myriad millionth of the square on the Earth's polar axis. Even today, the error is scarcely more than 1 inch in the side, 208.7 feet long, of an acre set out as a square. The geodetic